Establishing shots. Such a comforting idea. Introducing a buffer between scenes. Setting up locations in the way that we used to. One scene ends, and before we jump into the next one, a moment to breathe. Man, fuck establishing shots. Don't get me wrong, the idea itself makes a lot of sense. Standard establishing shots are there to set up new locations, but that's not all. It's because of their predictable nature, they introduce an element of comfort. We know where we are, where the characters are, and most importantly, we had enough time to realise we're watching a new scene. There's a clear separation and room to process what's just happened. But what if you don't want comfort or predictability? What if you want to keep the audience engaged at all times? You withhold the information. It could be as big as telling the audience that someone will be murdered, but not revealing who's the victim and who's the killer, or it could be as subtle as starting a scene with a shot that is limited in perspective. With no help from wide angles to place the scene in a 3D space, these shots constrain us to a narrow view, a view that makes it difficult to make out who and what the scene is going to be about. This creates a feeling of unease, heightened by the fact that most of those stripped down establishing shots feature some form of peeping. But before we get to peeping, let's examine the big picture, and the reason we can put the label establishing on a shot. Editing. According to some Russian dude, editing is the psychological guidance of the spectator. Since editing is all about structure, and Vsevolod Pudovkin writes shit that's too smart to take in all at once, let's break it down. One word at a time. Usually when we're talking about spectating in the context of films, we mean the viewer. The person watching the film is the one who takes in the story and makes the judgment of it. With Big Little Lies, however, we're dealing with a slightly more complicated case. Here we're not the only ones with a subjective reaction to what's happening on the screen. Because Big Little Lies is about people watching in all of its forms. From the perverted pleasure that comes from seeing other people fail, to the slightly upsetting idea that you can never be sure if there's someone observing you from a distance. These two are intrinsically linked to the other big aspect of the show, gossip.
Do not fuck with my daughter's birthday. I was in that bar, and I distinctly saw Madeline glance at a steak knife.
The whole city of Monterey is brimming with plotting, conflicting agendas, and petty politics. It's a tropical version of House of Cards. Gossip and misinformation are so much at the heart of Big Little Lies that the show's narrative is virtually built around them. The story is told in flashbacks from the perspective of unreliable narrators, residents of Monterey during police questioning. This Greek chorus, giving the knowledge of who killed who, create their own little interpretations of the events leading up to the murder.
It's possible that had she not fallen, nobody would have gotten killed.
It effectively makes the middlemen. It's through their eyes that we perceive the events unfolding. We're not only getting the main story, we're also getting multiple spectators' take on it. And it's biased. But wait, there's more. Big Little Lies reinforces the idea of people watching, even on a shot level. Which brings us back to peeping. These shots push forward the idea that no action happens in isolation. There's always someone watching, and it's through that person's eyes that we view the scene. This is a trope most commonly found in thrillers and horror films, playing on anxieties of being watched without our knowledge. Here the effect is less obvious. It doesn't necessarily carry negative connotations, rather it brings a more human touch to the story. We're always watching each other, and that limited perspective is all we've got. Whether it's a husband who wants to surprise his family and is taken by the view of his loved ones, or a man anxiously looking out for his ex-wife's husband just before an imminent confrontation, grounding a scene by forcing a perspective is a versatile narrative tool. This stylistic choice is most effective when the perspective is that of a child, an innocent observer. The kids pick up insecurities and moments of doubt their parents are so desperately trying to hide. Because Big Little Lies is not only about who you see, but also how. The characters are surrounded with reflections, mirrors, windows, and webcams. Not only do they provide a way to see a character's face in shots that would otherwise feature only their silhouette, the reflections feel integral to the themes of the show. And whilst the reflection can let you look at someone without their knowledge, at the same time, it reveals your own vulnerabilities.
Did you see what happened?
The aspect of looking at things and each other is the foundation for an important editing rule, preserving eyeline. It's the idea that if the character is looking to the right, then their eyeline is naturally guiding us to the next shot. Which brings us to the second part of that fancy Russian phrase, the act of guiding the spectator, which I interpret as the actual process of editing. Let's take that fundamental rule of preserving eyeline and see how Big Little Lies applies it to a simple scene. Watch closely how characters look at each other to either gain support or some sort of reaction to what's being said.
What's that?
Oh, Amabella's having a party. That's sweet.
I didn't get invited.
Honey, you don't know her very well. You don't know her at all.
This is about that stupid accusation.
It's fine.
Okay.
Not only do the eye lines match when the characters are speaking to each other, it's equally important when cutting to reaction shots. This skillful editing creates a web of looks, reactions, and reinforcements. But what if we took it even further and combined it with the prevalent peeping? Let's say you've got multiple scenes happening in one location, and you need to set the 3D space. Well, you could establish the location and then cut closer and closer until the audience is familiar with the layout. Or just get characters' eyes to do the job. Use character perspective as a guiding force that drives the edit. Like here. This scene takes place in front of the primary school our characters' kids attend. We start the scene by following Celeste and Perry as they pull up in front of the school. As they argue, we cut to the school's principal, who's literally peeking through the blinds. He's looking at the car, so we know exactly where he is in relation to it. As he changes his point of view, so do we, his eye line dictating what we cut to next. And in a traditional Big Little Lies fashion, the shot proves to be someone else's perspective again. But that's not the end either. In the final element of the setup, we get yet another point of view. We cut to Jane, who's also watching the kids. This whole setup is an elaborate exercise in filmmaking. Not only does it set the scenes in a 3D space, but it also does it in a way that reinforces the show's core themes. When telling a story, every step of the process matters, from individual shots, to how they come together as scenes, to the way the scenes are strung together, and Big Little Lies pulls no punches here. In the show, the scenes never quite end. They almost spill over into each other.
What a cunt.
Excuse me?
Why don't you get fucked?
Wow.
The war is on.
There's a lot of ways to do it. Playing the sound from the next scene before the actual cut is a standard editing practice.
No.
Everyone knew Nathan was a little bit of a dick, but a likable one.
Transitioning between scenes using an implied rhythm,
Did you hear
that's another level entirely. Images can also be used to achieve this sense of connection, for example by cutting to a shot that looks similar. This technique, famously used by Mr. Fake Moon Landing, is called a match cut. It's often used in Big Little Lies' incredible montages. By cutting between similar shots of different characters and blending the sounds, Big Little Lies hints at shared experiences and emotions. These sequences bring multiple strands of the story together in a surreal and striking fashion. Big Little Lies is also about miscommunication. The show's drama often stems from our inability to inhabit another person's thoughts. Even cinema has problems with that. Showing how characters think is one of the most difficult things to capture on screen. You can emulate comics or books.
The boy, Tom Hansen of Margate, New Jersey, grew up believing that he'd never truly be happy.
But why emulate other media when film has already got the perfect tool? Big Little Lies director Jean-Marc Vallée has an interesting editing technique that solves this problem. I call it a thought cut. I haven't got any Russian filmmakers to back me up on this term. Sorry. Anyway, back to thought cuts. Watch how Jean-Marc Vallée uses the mundane, pulling up on a driveway, to remind us of what keeps Celeste preoccupied. And just like the annoying thought you can't shake off, the scene flashes before our eyes. Keeping the audio out both detaches the thought and grounds it in the moment. Because thoughts don't make the world go away, they exist on top of it. Jean-Marc Vallée uses thought cuts in all of his films, and for a good reason. They're a powerful way to put in a character's head.
Remember, you can quit anytime.
With Big Little Lies, the intention was to avoid the sense of comfort and familiarity. Surprising shifts in perspective, prevalent peeping, unorthodox cutting style.
Thank you all for coming.
They all add up to what's effectively a disguised thriller. But even though we might get lost in the small-town politics of Monterey and a clash of personalities, Big Little Lies still reminds us why we're all here to begin with.
We've never had a trivia night.
Someone will die. Everyone's watching everyone, and we're not meant to exclude anybody from the suspects list.
I want to kill her.
So we join the characters in a peeping game as we're trying to solve the murder mystery. The mystery, however, isn't worth anything if we don't care about what happens next in the story. In order for us to care, we need to understand the character's motivation. It doesn't mean that characters need to be likable.
Oh my god.
What does matter though, is fleshing the characters out, making us believe they're real people, and finding a way for us to relate to them. Take the way the show uses diegetic music to put you right there in the scene with the characters. When music is diegetic, it simply means it can be heard by people on the screen. By making the music part of the world, the characters are listening to the same thing you are. It might not sound like a big deal, but when the selected tracks are so integral to the story, the consequences are far-reaching.
Would you dance with me?
When a sad song comes on, it's not just you who's reacting to that emotionally. The characters on the screen are feeling it too.
Can I get you?
Oh, God.
That creates a connection which helps us empathize with the characters. So often we choose to listen to the songs that reflect our current mood. The characters in Big Little Lies do the same.
Sorry.
That musical connection makes them feel more real, closer to us.
This is a beautiful song, honey.
10,000 miles gone. Oh, I wanna
So next time you're watching something that speaks to you on an emotional level, try paying attention to the small things, the use of framing, repeated themes, style of editing. It might seem like a very clinical approach, but the more you notice, the more you can appreciate the craft. With each film, there are infinite creative decisions that could have been taken. What were the reasons behind the decisions that ended up on the screen? Uncovering the layers of films is a never-ending insight into the wonders of human creativity and passion for telling stories. So keep watching, keep noticing, keep looking.
Take me to your river. I wanna know.
Too many joy rides in Daddy's Jaguar. Too many white lies and white lines. Super rich kids with nothing but loose ends. Super rich kids.